In today's video, we want to talk to you guys all about driving in Baja, its roads, and the different options for camping. Welcome back to Philly Roaming. My name is Dan.
My name's Marlene.
So in this video, we want to talk to you guys about all of the things you need to know when it comes to driving in Baja California. I mean, driving in Baja California is really not that different, obviously, than driving anywhere else. Whatever car that you're allowed to drive in the US, you're allowed to take it to Baja, assuming that you own the car, the paperwork is in your name, and if you have a lien on the car, that your bank gives you written permission to allow you to take it down there. So that's the process that you need to go through to get the vehicle actually down there. But once you get down there, what is it like to drive? So I will say that if it's your first time driving down there, there's gonna be a bit of a culture shock.
Especially right when you cross the border, it's going to feel like you had 10 lanes and all of a sudden there's no lines and everybody's merging into each other.
Yeah.
And it's going to feel chaotic. Just breathe and go slow, and soon it will open back up and be semi-normal again.
And also just driving behavior. The way that people drive down there is also very different.
Yeah.
So you gotta be ready for it. Just be on the lookout, keep your head on the swivel. Make sure that you're not changing lanes without double checking, triple checking before you do it. And depending on which border crossing you take, you may come into, let's say you take the Tecate border crossing. Tecate is a relatively small town. You don't really have a ton of traffic, but if you're going on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe it's worse. But if you're going through San Ysidro, going to Tijuana, that's going to be very hectic. But Tijuana is a pretty big city with highways and stuff. So you're actually on the highway for a while, for a lot of it. You can almost avoid getting into the city streets in Tijuana if you didn't want to do it. So that's actually okay. Just border crossing maybe take you a little longer. But if you go through Calexico, Mexicali, that's probably the place where you're sort of in between these two styles of border crossings. Not a super big city, but big enough. So it's not like Tecate. You're going to see a lot of locals driving and merging. Their stop signs look the same. Are they hexagons or octagons? They're the same shape, but instead of saying stop, it says alto. Stop signs, you'll be able to recognize it by shape, even if you don't speak Spanish. Street lights are a little bit different. The street lights in the US, you get red, and it goes straight to green.
Right.
And from green, it goes to yellow, and then red. Versus in Mexico, it goes to yellow in both directions. So it'll go from green to yellow to red, and before it goes from red back to green again, it'll go through to another yellow. So be aware that a lot of people who are used to driving through these lights, they are anticipating that yellow, and oftentimes they're going at the yellow. So you don't want to gun it out there and thinking that you're free to go, but everyone's going to do it at the same time. So be aware of that. As somebody who's traveling from a foreign country, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb, especially since you have probably a foreign license plate. So don't speed, make full stops.
The cops are going to be a little hungry for a bribe right when you cross the border.
Yeah.
So
that's the hot spot.
That's the hot spot. So just
don't speed. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
Right? And don't drive erratically. So when you first cross into Mexico, you may not be completely aware of your surroundings. So you're probably going to be driving slower than normal, which is good. But at the same time, don't drive so slow that you become a target for a different reason. One of the things that you want to do before you go in is that depending on what kind of self-service you have, you probably want to download offline maps for your mapping provider. Depending on what you use, you can do it with Waze, you can do it with Google Maps, you can do it with maps.me. So depending on what kind of GPS you have for driving directions, make sure you get offline maps. Otherwise, you may rack up a big roaming charge if your phone doesn't support roaming.
And on top of that, also download your Google Translate for Spanish. So there's a lot of area in Baja that has no cell service at all. A lot of people have Starlink these days, and that's going to work fine. There's no trees or blockage in Baja. But
you may not have. For most people who have Starlink, don't have the in-motion version.
Right.
So while you're driving, it's still important to have either some kind of self-service or have offline. Like Marlene said, Google Translate lets you download offline language packs, which won't translate everything, but it will translate the most common phrases for you. One of the things that is common practice in Baja as well as mainland Mexico, and it seems like nowhere else in Central America actually this happens, or nowhere else in Latin America at all, is that there's usually just on the single lane roads, if there's a shoulder, the shoulder is often used as the slow lane. So if you're going really slowly, or if you see a car going really slowly and they're off on the right lane, they're basically saying, I'm going slow, go ahead and pass. Versus, this is the kind of thing that's different in the US. Whereas in the US, a slow driver in a 2-lane row stays in the center of the lane, and if you want to pass, you have to wait for an opportunity to pass on the other side of the road. But in Baja, it's very common to see a car riding that shoulder. And in fact, when you see somebody do that in the US, you know that they're probably used to driving in Baja or somewhere in Mexico, and that's the reason why that happens. So if you're a slow driver, be aware of that custom. You may want to pull a little bit over to the side, and letting people pass is a real common courtesy there. There's not nearly the type of road rage that exists from people trying to pass each other or brake checking. But
there is dangerous behavior, not road rage, but just people passing blindly and dangerously. And
because they're so used to passing.
I think there could be a lot of head-on collisions, or some highways or roads don't have a shoulder at all. So it's like the line and then it drops off to, a few feet or whatever. And
I mean, just be aware of that.
Yeah.
When you come around a blind corner, it doesn't hurt to slow down and be careful, because even though you may not be doing anything wrong, there may be somebody coming from the other side passing on a blind corner. When you drive through a lot of these pueblos, a lot of these little villages and towns in Baja, you will find out that it seems like all of the little villages and towns are in charge of their own paved roads. The government, the federal government or the state government, only paves the main roads. More often than not, the second you turn off of a main road, the entire pueblo is unpaved. It is full of potholes and dirt roads.
And the same thing goes for sidewalks. Like, every house is in charge of their own sidewalks. There's no city sidewalks. So some people build it really tall. Some people don't do anything. There's
can be
always
treacherous.
An open, it's like manhole for the water and electricity. You have to be aware walking also that you don't fall in a hole and twist your ankle.
Yeah, so that's kind of the top line items for just navigating the roads in Baja, Mexico. Bigger cities are going to have less problems. Like, they have this government program called Pueblo Mágico, which means magical villages, and they're very beautiful. Towns like Todos Santos,
it's like an award.
Towns like Loreto are all Pueblos Mágicos, and it's an award that the government that gives to these villages, these towns, but they have to fulfill certain requirements to get it. So unless they fulfill it every year, they can actually get it revoked as well. So these towns generally are going to be better and more well kept, because the Pueblo Mexico designation gives them more tourism income, and a lot of that tourism income goes back into building the infrastructure of that town. So when you cross into Baja from the US, a lot of the places near the border will accept US dollars, but it's always good to also have pesos. And it used to be challenging to get cash. A lot of people, before they go to Baja for the first time, they'll overpay to get pesos from the US side at a really terrible exchange rate just to have some. But what we've experienced lately is that it's actually really easy now to just go to a bank and go to an ATM and get money out. Just make sure you go to a legitimate bank that that has a safe ATM. It's not that anyone's going to mug you necessarily. It is more so that you're not paying an outrageous fee for getting money out, and also make sure that there's no credit card skimmers stealing your credit card number when you're getting the cash out. What we like to use is we have an account called Charles Schwab Investors Checking Account. And you don't actually have to invest with Charles Schwab to get this account, but you do have to sign up for an investor account even if the balance is zero. And then you can use their checkings account, which comes with an ATM card that refunds every ATM transaction fee back to you monthly, regardless whether it's in their network or not. So that's a really, really good one to use, and that's one I recommend everybody. And also, besides getting cash, it is much safer now, it feels like, to use credit cards. When we were in Baja and mainland Mexico in 2016, we almost exclusively used cash. I would get cash out every time I needed to buy something because a lot of places didn't accept credit cards. But nowadays, it's actually very, very common to accept credit cards almost everywhere.
Yeah.
And credit cards, the credit card that I recommend using is the Chase Sapphire. I think there's also a Citibank version that does something similar. And the Chase Sapphire one is great because it doesn't charge you any foreign transaction fees. So that's the one. And my experience with that card is that, for good or for bad, it has never, I don't know if it has ever been declined using it outside of the US.
Yeah, it's been pretty good.
It's been pretty good. So everywhere I use it, it just accepts it. So you might argue that's a negative, right? Because if you lose it, then it's just going to get used everywhere. But Chase is also really good about making sure that, well, I won't say it's never been declined. It has been declined in the past, but I get a text right away, and I can click yes. I can reply yes on that text, and it will activate the card right back. So in that sense, it's a really good card. And you get a lot of points for travel and different benefits and stuff like that.
We're not sponsored. That's what we use.
That's what we use, and we've been using it for all of our international travels. And in fact, when we flew back from Mexico to the U.S. last summer, it paid for all of our flights going back. That's how I would recommend you guys getting cash and using credit cards. The next thing you want to consider is getting water and getting fuel. So fuel is easy. Fuel, the thing you want to think about is, it used to be that you pay cash for it, but a lot of the gas stations now will have these sort of portable credit card machines that's tap enabled. You can just pay by that. The important thing there is to, if at all possible, make sure that you are there when they use the card. Don't let them take the card from you and then go somewhere to charge it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an important thing to do, just to minimize any risk of things happening.
Double charging
with your card.
That sometimes happens.
Yeah.
And make sure the pump is zeroed out, and they usually say, okay, look, that's zero.
Because there are places where they will try to scam you by giving you less fuel than you actually put in and then charging you for a higher amount.
So I think in this situation, if you want to see if anybody else has been scammed at a gas station or had any trouble, download the iOverlander app, and there'll be other user contributed things. Say, oh, I had trouble at this gas station, and then to avoid that one and maybe go to the next one. But sometimes there aren't that many choices for gas stations, so you should always fill up when you can, especially on those long stretches
in the middle of Baja. Yeah.
So you got to plan your gas stops for sure.
Yeah, I think the longest gas gap is between Bahia de Los Angeles to Guerrero Negro.
Yeah.
Or maybe I would even say from San Felipe down to Guerrero Negro, because there is some gas stations along the way, but we found those gas stations to be just out of fuel a lot.
Yeah, sometimes if you're there during like Baja 1000 or the van life event or something like that, and it can run dry, and you're like, oh, I'll get gas at Gonzaga Bay, and then Gonzaga Bay says, sorry, no diesel, and you're kind of screwed. So
yeah, and it's a long ways to the next one.
Yeah.
And at the turnout to go to Bahia de Los Angeles, there's usually a guy there selling gas out of like milk jugs. That is really last resort, because you really don't know how old that gas is and how long it's been there, and whether it's actual real gas or if it's watered down. So, just be aware, bring jerry cans with you if your car doesn't have a lot of range. And that's gasoline.
And diesel, I think it's important. A lot of people take new diesel vehicles down south, and if you're on the north,
if you're within 500 miles of the U.S. border,
or basically above Guerrero Negro, the whole, it's a Baja, just California,
Baja Norte.
Baja Norte, then it follows the 15
parts per million, it's ultra low sulfur diesel, right?
Once you get in the second half, they say they also have it, but some people have been testing it, and I think they're lying.
I mean, you know,
Some of
they
them?
know that if they say they have it, they'll sell to more people.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would question, I would not trust the sign 100%. Just know that even a modern diesel will be able to accept high low sulfur diesel that's not ultra low, which is about 40 times more sulfur content than ultra low. So you can use it for short periods of time.
Yeah.
But if you were down there for an extended period of time with a modern diesel, with all the emissions control systems in place, you will run into problems. We've talked to people who literally have had to leave their engine on for days trying to get back to the US because the computer of the engine told them that there's no more starts if you shut it off.
Yeah, but other people have no trouble. It just depends on your luck and how your engine does on the regen cycles and all that fancy stuff it does. So
Yeah.
just be aware the north is okay, but south,
If you're not going
you just don't
down
know.
for very long,
Yeah.
top off before you get to the southern part of Baja. And if you had to get fuel down there, diesel down there, you can get diesel down there. Shop around a little bit. You know, even if it says ultra low sulfur, it may not be. But if it is, then it's going to be better for your modern diesel engine.
And DEF, there's so many auto zones down there. You just
Yeah,
pick
you
it
can
up
get an
AutoZone or Walmart. It's depending on where you're-
available.
Yeah.
So that's getting fuel, and getting water is a different story. Getting water in Baja, it's actually there's a process. You'll get used to it pretty quickly. Obviously, you don't want to drink the water. If you guys know about the drinking water situation in Baja and all of Mexico, the water is not potable, but some locals do drink it, and some of them don't get sick. I've even talked to we talked to a Canadian couple whose the wife drinks it and the husband doesn't. Wife doesn't get sick, and the husband got deathly ill. So, you know, depending on how you tolerate stuff like that, I would just recommend not drinking the water. And what they have is they have all these agua purificadoras, which are just water purification plants. And they're not all like the types that you see in the US where it's like an automated coin-operated system. A lot of these are just full-on like water treatment facilities, and they just have PVC pipes piped to the front with a nozzle. You go in there with your jug, and they use these, they call them garrafones, but they're these 5-gallon, you know, we call them Sparklets bottles. I don't know if Sparklet is even around anymore. But you know those 5-gallon jugs, the round ones with the top? So they fill those. You can get that pretty cheap. Usually what we do is we just have them fill jugs, and we take the jugs and fill our tank with the jugs.
Sometimes they have a hose.
You can ask for a hose sometimes, and some of them, I think they will let you fill from a hose. The problem with filling with a hose at some of these places is that they don't like to do it, but what they'll do instead, they'll ask you how big your tank is, and they'll just charge you for the whole tank because they don't know if you're empty or if you're halfway. If you have a 40-gallon tank, you tell them it's halfway, but you're actually less, then they don't want to be shortchanged by how much water they sell you. So fill with a hose in places that you can, but just be aware that you may not be able to fill with a hose. Have alternatives. And a lot of these places, you know, if you have to fill with a bottle, it means that you're filling from a non-pressurized hose. And some more modern RVs require pressurized hoses to fill their tanks. So if that's the situation, make sure you have a gravity fill option in your RV. So when it comes to camping, Marlene mentioned the iOverlander app. That is a really good resource. That is primarily what a lot of people use to find camping, whether it be wild camping or campgrounds or restaurants that allow camping, hotels that let you park in their parking lots for a fee, or just beaches where there's concessionaires that come by and charge you a fee to camp there. All that stuff is there, and it's as popular as it is now. All these places are getting constant reviews, so you can get a pretty up-to-date information on what these places are like. So use iOverlander to check camping. Wild camping is pretty easy all over Baja. It's not the case outside of Baja. Which is one of the reasons why we love Baja so much. There's a lot more dispersed camping available. If you're choosing to wild camp in Baja, just follow the tread lightly protocol. Don't make new paths when you don't have to. There's no reason for you to charge down this new area that hasn't been charged before, because as wild and as desolate as you think Baja is, it isn't really. Every place that you think that you can go to that people haven't go to, people have been.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite surprising when you go to these places. You just realize you went through this really treacherous road to get to a beautiful place. And there's a local guy there in a Nissan Sentra. So have some humility, be humble, tread lightly, don't make new trails.
Yeah.
And if you're driving on beaches, that could be problematic too, because along all the beaches of Baja, or at least a lot of the beaches of Baja, there are sea turtles that come and lay eggs seasonally.
Yeah.
And if you're driving over soft sand, you can very easily be trampling over, and they lay hundreds, dozens and hundreds of eggs at the same time in a hole. And you could be driving right over them, crushing hundreds of sea turtle eggs.
Don't kill the turtles.
Don't be a turtle killer.
Yeah, and a lot of these places, when you're wild camp, there's no trash, and you will notice trash. So pack your stuff out and pick up the extra stuff that doesn't belong to you and make it better. And don't, because if we just it's just so much trash, it's going to get banned.
A lot of places
and that's going to be so sad for the future generations.
A lot of places you feel overwhelmed by how much trash there is already. And some people may feel like, well, there's already so much trash, like what's another bag? But, that's obviously can't be the attitude that we have. And also, when you look at trash on the beach and stuff like that, realize that a lot of the stuff that's on the beach or even in just out in empty fields, they're often blown in from somewhere else. Because you can get really strong winds in Baja, and especially on the coast, they can get washed up and down. So, it's not necessarily the locals who don't care. It could just be a big landfill somewhere else that big windstorm came and just blew it everywhere. Yeah. So do what you can to keep the place clean.
Like we see a lot of like trash cans that are full, and so I'm just gonna put my trash next to the trash can, and then the wild dogs come or the stray dogs, and there's
rip up the bag.
Trash everywhere. They're eating it. It's just, if there's no room in the trash cans is full, sorry, you just have to take it with you. Like we don't have a trasheroo. We just put it inside on the step, and when we get to town, then find a trash can, throw it away, and just
be responsible.
That's really hard to deal with.
I hate to be preachy about this, but
sometimes you have to.
Sometimes you have to. One of the most important things about driving in Baja, and often in just foreign countries in general, is to not drive at night. And Baja specifically, the most important reason why you don't drive at night is because that the nights are cold, especially if you go down there in the wintertime. And a lot of the animals, cattle, sheep, even horses, donkeys, they come to pavement at night and they lay down because it retains heat from during the day. And since there are no street lights, there's no highway lights. And if you're driving at night and you don't have good lights on your car, you can't see too far ahead of you, you may be going 50 miles an hour and suddenly there's a cow sleeping. So that's a bad day for the cow, and it's a bad day for you and your car. So that's the biggest reason why you don't want to do it. And of course, other safety reasons are valid as well. And if there's somebody out there looking to harm somebody, they're going to do it in the cover of night. So it's best to try to find where you're going to be for the night while the sun is still out. And even if it means that you have to go a little bit slower, you have to take a little longer to get to where you want to be, it's better to be safe than sorry.
We don't like to start our days early. We like to sleep in, but when we're in a foreign country, we like to get going as soon as possible, because a lot of times you think you're going to get to a wild camping spot and you're like, this is not good, or the road is too sandy for our car, and then you need to have a plan B and sometimes a plan C. So get there early, and if you do, you will get stuck in Baja. It's just, we weren't looking for trouble, and we got stuck at a stupid place. And we had, take out shovels and dig and max tracks and all that. And
have some recovery gear.
And just be aware if your car has a winch and you think, oh, I'm good, guess what? Baja doesn't have any trees
Yeah.
to put your winch on, and you can't strap it on a cactus or a desert lily. So
Yeah. And it's hard to dig holes in that really tough pavement. Maybe you'll be okay on the beach to dig a sea anchor or a sand anchor.
yeah.
But yeah.
And tides,
it's
if you're on the beach, just be aware of the high tide line, especially during full moons. It can get really high, and people, wake up
Really close, if not in the water.
in the seawater.
Yeah.
And good luck getting out in the middle of the night. That happened to those French people.
Yeah, we had it. We were watching them from far away.
We were going to help them.
We were going to help them
if
they didn't get themselves out, because water had come in already,
Well,
and they were
set
like
up-
knee high in the water.
they were freaking out. They got out their lawn chairs and sat in the water and just enjoyed the salt water.
Yeah, there was nothing they
rising
could do.
car. So we're like, okay.
So I think that's it. I
Yeah.
think those are the main things that you have to be aware of when you go down to Baja California when it comes to driving, navigating, finding camping, getting water, getting fuel, and all the important stuff. If you have any other questions about navigating Baja, feel free to ask them in the comments below. We hope this video was helpful to you guys on your next Baja adventure, or maybe your first Baja adventure.
Hope it helps. Thanks for watching.
See you guys in the next one.